The late afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the countertop cluttered with half-eaten sandwiches and crumpled napkins. I stood there, washing dishes, my mind drifting to the last 7 years of my life. The routine felt suffocating, the same conversations, the same meals, and the same empty spaces where laughter once echoed. My husband, Mark, was in his study, engrossed in work as usual. I often wondered if he even noticed how distant we had become. Family gatherings were supposed to be a break from monotony, a chance to reconnect. This time, however, it felt like another obligation. The aroma of grilled chicken wafted through the air as I set out plates for our guests. Mark's nephew, Jake, had arrived early. He was 25, charming in a boyish way that reminded me of simpler times. I hadn't seen him in months, he had been busy with his own life. As I wiped my hands on a dish towel, I caught sight of him laughing with my sister-in-law in the living room. When Jake approached me later at the gathering, he wore an easy smile that momentarily lifted my spirits. "Hey Aunt Allison," he said casually. "How's it going?" His voice was light and carefree, a stark contrast to the weight I felt pressing down on my chest. "Just getting things ready," I replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. As we chatted about trivial matters, his job at a local tech firm and my attempts at gardening, there was an undeniable spark of connection between us. It surprised me how easily we fell into conversation. It felt refreshing amidst the stale air of my marriage. In that moment, it didn't matter that he was my husband's nephew. It felt like we were two people sharing a moment of genuine understanding. Later that evening, as laughter filled the room and glasses clinked together in celebration, I found myself glancing towards Jake more frequently than necessary. He caught my eye across the crowded room and smiled knowingly. Something stirred within me, a longing for connection that had been absent for so long. After dinner, while everyone else mingled outside on the patio under twinkling fairy lights, Jake leaned closer to me at the table. "I could use some company," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper amidst the laughter around us. "Company?" I echoed back with feigned innocence. He nodded slightly toward his phone screen displaying messages from friends who had canceled their plans last minute. "Yeah," he continued lightly but earnestly now. "I don't want to be alone tonight." The request hung in the air between us, an invitation wrapped in vulnerability that resonated deeply within me. The thought of spending time with someone who seemed genuinely interested in me ignited something dormant inside. As our family gathering slowly wound down and guests began to filter out into their cars under the night sky's embrace, Jake lingered just a moment longer than necessary by my side. "Let's grab coffee tomorrow," he suggested casually as if it were nothing more than an innocent outing between relatives. I hesitated but then nodded slowly. Something about his presence made me feel alive again. The next day dawned gray and rainy, a stark contrast to my mood as I prepared for our coffee meeting at a cozy cafe downtown known for its artisanal brews and inviting atmosphere. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air as I walked inside. Soft jazz played in the background while patrons chatted quietly among themselves. Jake arrived shortly after me and greeted me with an easy grin that made my heart race unexpectedly. We settled into a corner booth near a window where raindrops danced against the glass like tiny performers putting on a show just for us. "So," he began after taking a sip of his cappuccino, "what have you been up to lately?" His gaze held mine steadily as if searching for something beneath my surface. I spoke about mundane things, the garden that refused to bloom properly and how Mark had taken up fishing again, but deep down there was an unspoken tension building between us that electrified every word exchanged. In moments of silence punctuated by laughter from nearby tables or raindrops tapping against glass walls, we shared snippets about our lives, a glimpse into who we were beyond family ties, and each revelation seemed to draw us closer together until everything else faded away except for this connection forming between us. Then came that moment when our hands brushed against each other accidentally over spilled sugar packets on the table, a fleeting touch yet charged with significance, and suddenly everything shifted again within me. Guilt crept in alongside exhilaration at this unexpected intimacy blossoming between us despite all odds stacked against it. As we left together into the rain-soaked streets outside afterward, our laughter echoing against pavement, I couldn't shake off how exhilarating this newfound companionship felt even though shadows loomed over every smile exchanged or word spoken aloud between us. What would happen next? Just then, my phone buzzed violently against my thigh, breaking through thoughts swirling around like autumn leaves caught up in wind. I pulled it out only to see Mark's name flashing across screen. Anxiety tightened around me like chains binding limbs together as dread settled deep within gut, instinctively knowing something wasn't right. Ignoring it wouldn't work forever, it never did, but part of me wanted desperately not just this moment but many more moments shared with Jake before reality came crashing back down upon all involved. I hesitated, staring at Mark's name on the screen. My heart raced, and I felt an overwhelming urge to ignore the call. Instead, I took a deep breath and answered. Hello? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Where are you? Mark's tone was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. You said you'd be home by now. I'm just running a little late, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. Traffic was bad. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Traffic? It's a Tuesday evening, Allison. You know how it is. There was a pause before he added, I hope you're not with anyone else. His words struck me hard. I could feel Jake's presence lingering in my thoughts, but I pushed it aside. Of course not. Just finishing up some errands. All right. Just get home soon, he said before hanging up abruptly. The conversation left me unsettled. I glanced at the bathroom door where Jake had just stepped out moments ago. We had shared so much laughter and warmth today. Yet here I was, tangled in deceit and guilt. Later that evening, as we sat together on the couch watching television, the tension between Mark and me felt palpable. He kept glancing at his phone as if expecting something important to come through while I tried to focus on the show playing in front of us. Are you okay? Mark asked suddenly, his gaze piercing through me. Yeah, just tired, I replied too quickly. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he turned his attention back to the screen while my mind wandered back to Jake's easy smile and how comfortable we had been together. Days passed with this uneasy balance of normalcy and hidden truth hanging over me like storm clouds threatening rain. Each time my phone buzzed with a message from Jake, excitement mixed with fear coursed through my veins. One afternoon at work, during lunch break at the cafe down the street, I found myself scrolling through our conversations again. The way we talked about our lives felt refreshing compared to what I experienced at home. Then came a message from him. Want to meet up tonight? I hesitated before typing back my response, sure. A thrill ran through me as if breaking free from chains that had bound me for too long. That evening was filled with laughter and shared stories over drinks at a local bar where we could be ourselves without judgment or expectation from family members hovering nearby. The dim lighting created an intimate atmosphere where we could forget reality for just a moment longer. As we talked about everything and nothing, our dreams, fears, the connection deepened unexpectedly until words failed us completely. In that instant of silence between breaths, nos besamos. The kiss ignited something inside me, a feeling of being alive again after years of feeling invisible in my own life, but guilt crashed over me almost immediately after pulling away from him. What does this mean for us? Jake asked softly as if afraid to break the spell that had enveloped us both. I don't know, I admitted honestly while glancing away toward the bar counter filled with half-empty glasses and laughter echoing around us like distant memories of happiness long forgotten. We agreed to take things slow despite knowing how risky this all felt, like walking on thin ice above freezing water below. but part of me craved every moment spent with him even more now than ever before. Returning home later that night brought back feelings of dread creeping into my mind once again. Would Mark notice anything different? Would he sense the shift within me? As days turned into weeks filled with secret meetings cloaked under layers of excuses, work late or running errands, I couldn't shake off feelings weighing heavily upon my conscience. Hiding behind smiles felt exhausting when every interaction reminded me how fragile everything truly was beneath surface appearances. Then one afternoon while cleaning out old boxes in our attic, something mundane yet necessary, I stumbled upon an old photo album filled with memories from happier times spent together as newlyweds. Laughter echoed through pages capturing moments frozen forever beneath dust-covered covers until now revealed once more. Suddenly overwhelmed by nostalgia coupled with regret washed over me like waves crashing against rocks. Memories flooded back uninvited reminding me why I'd fallen in love with Mark years ago. And yet here I was seeking solace elsewhere instead. Just then, my phone buzzed again breaking through thoughts swirling around once more. I pulled it out quickly only to see another message from Jake. Can we talk? Anxiety gripped my heart tightly as fear settled deep within once again. What did he want? Did he sense something changing between us? I knew this wasn't sustainable anymore, but could I really walk away from everything? My husband's voice cut through the air like a knife. Where are you? He demanded, his tone laced with suspicion. I stood frozen, the weight of his words heavy on my chest. I had been so caught up in my own feelings that I hadn't considered how my actions might affect him. I'm out, I replied, trying to sound casual. Just running some errands. The lie felt bitter on my tongue. I could sense the tension radiating from him, and it only added to my growing anxiety. Later that evening, I found myself staring at my phone, contemplating whether to text my husband's nephew. The memory of our last encounter lingered in my mind. Nuestros labios se encontraron echoed softly as I recalled that moment in the quiet of the house. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I hesitated but ultimately decided to reach out. Hey, do you want to meet up tomorrow? I typed quickly before second-guessing myself. The response came almost immediately, sure. Where? My heart raced with anticipation mixed with guilt. As I prepared for our meeting at a local cafe, a sense of dread washed over me. What would we talk about? Would we acknowledge what had happened between us? The cafe was cozy, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. It felt like a world away from my reality. When he arrived, there was an undeniable spark in the air between us. We exchanged pleasantries, but it quickly shifted to more personal topics. I've been thinking about what happened, he said cautiously, his eyes searching mine for understanding. Me too, I admitted, feeling vulnerable yet exhilarated by our connection. The conversation flowed easily as we shared stories about our pasts and dreams for the future. However, beneath the surface lurked an unspoken tension. Suddenly, he leaned closer and whispered, "What if we took this further? Just for a weekend?" My heart raced at his suggestion of a getaway together. The thrill of breaking free from my mundane life beckoned me like a siren song. Yet guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. Could I really abandon everything for this fleeting passion? As if sensing my hesitation, he reached across the table and took my hand gently. His warmth sent shivers down my spine. "Let's just enjoy each other's company," he urged softly, pulling me back into the moment. "We can figure things out later." For a brief second, everything felt right in our little bubble away from reality. But as our time together came to an end, doubt crept back in again like an unwelcome shadow. My phone buzzed with another message from my husband, "We need to talk tonight." Panic surged through me as I realized how precarious this situation had become. What would happen if he confronted me about anything? Would he find out about us? As I walked home under the dim streetlights, every step felt heavier than the last. That night at home was tense, Dinner was unusually quiet as we avoided eye contact while eating. My heart pounded as we finally sat down together after clearing the table. "I've noticed you've been acting differently lately," he began slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to read me like an open book. "What do you mean?" I asked defensively while internally cringing at how transparent I must have seemed. "You seem distant," he continued carefully. "Is there something going on that you're not telling me?" His words struck deep within me. It felt like being exposed under bright lights with nowhere to hide. For a moment, silence enveloped us before he added sharply, "If there's something wrong in our marriage, let's fix it." The weight of his suggestion hung heavily in the air between us. Fixing it would mean confronting everything, my feelings for him and for his nephew, and that was something I wasn't ready to do just yet. "I just need some time," was all I managed to say before retreating into silence again while thoughts swirled chaotically inside my head. As sleep evaded me that night, images of both men clouded my mind, my husband's steadfastness against the thrilling uncertainty of what lay ahead with his nephew weighed heavily on me. What had started as a simple connection had spiraled into something far more complicated than I'd ever imagined possible. A tangled web where every choice carried consequences beyond what I'd anticipated. The next morning brought no clarity. Instead, it only intensified my confusion further when another unexpected twist unfolded. My husband received an urgent phone call from someone close to him regarding work matters that required immediate attention outside the house. As he rushed off without another word, leaving me alone once again in this silent turmoil, the decision loomed larger than ever. Should I confront him or continue down this path filled with uncertainty? With rising panic mixed with anticipation swirling within me like storm clouds gathering overhead, I knew one thing for certain: whatever choice lay ahead would change everything forever. The next few days passed in a haze of anxiety and guilt. I avoided my husband, unable to face his piercing gaze or the questions that lingered unspoken. I found myself drawn to my phone, checking for messages from the nephew, hoping for some comfort amidst the chaos. Each time it buzzed, my heart raced, but it was never him. Finally, I decided to reach out. I texted him late one night, fingers trembling as I typed. "Can we talk?" The response came quickly, of course. "Where?" We agreed to meet at the small cafe down the street, a place where we could sit in the corner and be lost among other patrons. When I arrived, he was already there, his expression a mixture of concern and relief. "I've missed you," he said softly as I slid into the seat across from him. For a moment, the weight of my troubles lifted just enough for me to breathe. "I'm in so much trouble," I admitted, looking down at my hands clasped tightly together. "My husband knows something is off." His eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" I hesitated before revealing everything, the messages he had seen and how close we had come to being caught. "He's on edge," I said quietly. "I don't know what he'll do." "Maybe we should stop meeting," he suggested cautiously, his voice barely above a whisper. "No." The word escaped my lips before I could think better of it. "I can't just walk away now." We spent hours talking about our fears and desires, sharing stories that deepened our connection even more. In that cozy cafe corner, surrounded by the aroma of coffee and pastries, we felt like we were in our own world, a world where nothing else mattered. The conversation took an unexpected turn when he leaned closer and whispered, "I want more than this secret." I felt a flutter in my chest at his words but also a sense of dread creeping back in. "What are you saying?" "Let's take a weekend trip together, just us," he proposed boldly. My heart raced at the thought of escaping our reality, but fear gripped me tightly. What if someone finds out? What if your family knows? He reached across the table and took my hand gently. "We can be careful." As we sat there contemplating this reckless idea, something shifted inside me, a longing for freedom mixed with an understanding of what was at stake. That night changed everything for us. We spent the night together at his apartment after deciding to act on our feelings without thinking about consequences. As dawn broke through the window, illuminating our tangled forms under soft blankets, reality crashed back into focus like an unwelcome guest. Suddenly aware of how easily everything could unravel again, I sat up abruptly, pulling away from him as panic set in once more. "What's wrong?" he asked sleepily. "I can't keep doing this," I replied firmly yet shakily. "It's too risky." His expression darkened with frustration as he ran a hand through his hair. "You're not serious about us then?" "I am. But this isn't sustainable." My voice trembled with uncertainty. When I returned home later that morning, my heart sank further into despair as I found my husband waiting for me in the living room with an unreadable expression on his face. "Where were you?" His tone was flat but heavy with accusation. "I went for a walk," I stammered awkwardly while avoiding eye contact. "Don't lie to me." His voice rose slightly as he stepped closer. Before I could respond or defend myself against his probing questions about my whereabouts last night, my phone buzzed again with an incoming message from him. "We need to talk." A chill ran down my spine as dread washed over me. It was time to face whatever consequences awaited us both, my heart racing faster than ever before as realization settled in, nothing would ever be the same again. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The weight of his message hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash chaos. My husband's face was a mixture of anger and hurt as he awaited my answer. I could feel the tension tightening around us, thick and suffocating. "Where were you?" he asked again, his voice low but firm. I hesitated, searching for the right words that wouldn't betray everything I had kept hidden. "Just out with friends," I finally managed to say, hoping it would suffice. But the flicker of doubt in his eyes told me it wouldn't be enough. He crossed his arms, leaning against the kitchen counter as if bracing himself for something inevitable. "You've been distant lately," he continued. "It's like you're hiding something." My heart raced at the truth of his words. I had been hiding so much. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my nephew. "Can we meet?" Panic surged through me. How could I face him now? I knew that if my husband saw that message, everything would unravel even more quickly than it already was. "Who is that?" he asked sharply, pointing at my phone where the screen lit up with my nephew's name. My stomach dropped as I realized how exposed I felt in this moment. "Just someone from work," I lied hastily, but even as the words left my mouth, I could see he wasn't convinced. "Don't lie to me," he snapped back, frustration evident in his voice. "I deserve honesty." The tension escalated with each passing second, and I felt trapped between two worlds, one that had become stale and another that was dangerously alive with secrets. Before I could respond further, my husband moved closer to me and snatched my phone from the counter. My breath caught in my throat as he scrolled through messages with growing intensity. Each word seemed to echo louder than the last in my mind. Would he find out everything? Would this be the end? His expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief as he read a message from earlier that day. "I miss you." The silence that followed felt deafening. Every heartbeat echoed like a countdown clock reaching its end. "What is this?" His voice trembled slightly with rage and betrayal. "Who are you missing?" The reality of being caught struck me like a physical blow. All I could do was stare at him helplessly. "I can explain," I stammered, but deep down, there was no explanation that would make sense anymore, not when everything had spiraled so far out of control. "Explain what?" He tossed the phone onto the table like it was on fire. "That you've been lying to me for months?" His eyes bore into mine with an intensity that made me feel small and exposed. "I never meant for this to happen," I said weakly, tears beginning to well up in my eyes. But even as they fell, part of me felt numb, a strange detachment from the reality unfolding before us. "Are you having an affair?" His voice dropped to a whisper filled with disbelief and pain. That word hung heavy between us as a affair, and suddenly our entire life together felt like it was crumbling before my eyes. My voice faltered as guilt washed over me like a tide pulling away all hope for reconciliation. How could I explain what had happened? How could I justify falling for someone who should have been off limits? He shook his head slowly as if trying to process what he had just heard, or perhaps what he feared was true. I can't do this anymore, he said finally, turning away from me as if distancing himself physically would lessen the emotional blow. Please don't say that, I begged softly, feeling desperation clawing at my insides. We can work through this. But deep down, both of us knew we were standing on shaky ground, words were no longer enough. The silence stretched between us until he finally turned back toward me with determination etched on his face. I want a divorce. It felt like ice water had been thrown over me. Shock coursed through every part of my being as those words sank in. No. The word escaped before I could stop myself. Panic surged within me at the thought of losing everything we had built together, even if it had become hollow over time. But there was no changing his mind now. His decision loomed large between us like an insurmountable wall built from shattered trust and betrayal. As he walked away from our kitchen table, our once shared space now feeling foreign, I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom hanging over both our heads. What would happen next? Would anyone understand how deeply lost we'd become? With each step away from him came a realization, not only did our marriage hang by a thread, but so did any chance for happiness or connection outside its confines too. I stood there, frozen in the kitchen, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My husband's words echoed in my mind, a harsh reminder of our fractured relationship. I could feel my phone vibrate on the table, a message from him. The nephew. The one who had become my escape from this suffocating reality. As I reached for my phone, a mixture of excitement and dread coursed through me. He wanted to meet. My heart raced at the thought of seeing him again, yet guilt gnawed at my insides. I glanced toward the door where my husband had just exited, wondering if he would return to confront me again. "Where are you?" the message read. It was simple and direct, but it stirred something within me that I couldn't ignore. I hesitated before typing back a quick response, "Just out for a walk." It felt like a lie, but it was easier than facing the truth. I decided to go to our usual spot, a small cafe down the street known for its quiet corners and strong coffee. It had always been our sanctuary away from prying eyes. As I walked there, memories flooded back of happier times with my husband, moments that now felt like distant echoes of what once was. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there, waiting at our favorite table by the window. He looked up as I approached, his expression shifting from concern to relief. "I was worried you wouldn't come," he said softly. "I had to," I replied, trying to mask the turmoil inside me with a smile. We talked about mundane things at first, work and family, but it quickly turned into something deeper as we shared secrets and fears that we had kept hidden from everyone else. "Do you think we can keep doing this?" he asked suddenly, his eyes searching mine for an answer. I felt torn between two worlds, the life I had built with my husband and this unexpected connection that brought me so much joy. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. Just then, my phone buzzed again, a notification that sent chills down my spine. It was a message from my husband, "We need to talk." My heart sank as panic set in, he must have sensed something was off. "I have to go," I said abruptly, standing up before he could respond. The warmth of our conversation faded as reality crashed back in around me. When I returned home, tension filled the air like a thick fog. My husband was waiting for me in the living room, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "So you're just going to run off without telling me where you were?" His voice was low but laced with anger. "I needed some air," I replied defensively. "Air? Or freedom?" he shot back, his eyes narrowing as if he could see right through me. His words hung between us like an accusation. "What do you want from me?" "I want honesty," he demanded sharply. In that moment of confrontation, everything felt fragile and precarious, like glass teetering on the edge of a table ready to shatter at any moment. "You haven't been honest with yourself either," I found myself saying against my better judgment. He took a step forward, his expression shifting from anger to confusion as if grappling with what lay beneath our surface-level arguments. "What does that mean?" Before I could respond or even think through what I'd just said, there was another buzz from my phone. This time it was an unknown number calling me repeatedly. My heart raced again. Fear gripped me tightly as every instinct told me not to answer it. "Who is it?" he asked suspiciously. "I don't know." The panic in my voice surprised even myself as I fumbled for my phone and finally silenced it before looking back at him with wide eyes filled with uncertainty about everything unfolding around us. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, tension crackled like static electricity in the air between us as we both stood there, two people trapped in their own worlds yet unable to escape each other's reality anymore. Then came another twist. My phone vibrated once more. This time it was a text message, "We need to talk." It was from him, the nephew, and suddenly everything felt impossibly tangled between love and obligation once more. "What's going on with you?" My husband's voice broke through my thoughts again. Frustration seeped into every word spoken between us now as if we were both drowning in unspoken truths that threatened to pull us under entirely if we didn't find solid ground soon enough. I took a deep breath. Clarity pierced through all chaos momentarily. It became evident how precarious everything truly was now. I stood there, the weight of my husband's words hanging heavily in the air. The tension between us was palpable, a constant reminder of the chasm that had formed over the years. I could see the concern etched on his face, but I had become a master at masking my feelings. "I'm just tired," I replied, hoping to deflect his probing questions. The next day, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband as I sat in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee and staring out at the bustling street. "Can we talk tonight?" I felt a chill run down my spine. The urgency in his text hinted at something serious. My heart raced as I glanced at the screen. It was too late to backtrack now. Later that evening, I found myself pacing around the living room, waiting for him to return home. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I thought about how different things had been just weeks ago when I had shared laughter and stolen moments with my husband's nephew. Now those moments felt like distant memories, overshadowed by guilt and fear. When he finally walked through the door, there was an unsettling silence between us. "We need to discuss your behavior lately," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I braced myself for what was coming next. My heart pounded as he continued, "I know you've been hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything," I shot back defensively, but inside I felt like a fraud. My mind raced back to those late-night conversations and secret rendezvous that had brought me both joy and despair. Then came the twist that shattered any semblance of calm. "I spoke with Mark today." Mark was my husband's nephew, the same one who had become so important to me in such a short time. My stomach dropped as panic surged through me. Had he found out about us? "What did he say?" My voice trembled despite my efforts to sound composed. "He mentioned you two have been spending time together." His eyes bore into mine with an intensity that made me want to look away but forced me to confront my reality instead. "I've been trying to connect with him," I admitted reluctantly, feeling the walls close in tighter around me with each passing second. My husband's expression hardened. "Connect? Is that what you call it? Because it sounds more like betrayal." His words struck me like daggers, each syllable cut deeper than the last. As we argued back and forth, another twist emerged from our heated exchange. "If you can't be honest with me about this, maybe we should consider separation." His voice wavered slightly but remained resolute. The thought sent shockwaves through me. It was one thing to feel trapped in my marriage, but another entirely to face losing everything, my family and stability, over fleeting moments of intimacy that now felt so foolishly reckless. "Wait," I said suddenly, desperation rising within me as clarity began to seep through the chaos of our confrontation. "Let's not make rash decisions here." But before he could respond, another message chimed on my phone, a text from Mark asking if we could meet soon. My heart sank further into turmoil. How could I face him after everything? "Who is it?" my husband demanded sharply as he glanced at my phone screen. "It's just work," I lied quickly, knowing full well that every word felt like quicksand beneath me. "Work doesn't usually require secrecy," he countered bitterly before turning away from me toward his study. A door slamming shut behind him echoed through our home like a final nail in our marriage's coffin. I sank onto the couch, feeling utterly defeated and alone amidst all this chaos I'd created, my heart heavy with regret while uncertainty loomed over every decision ahead of me. Just then, it hit me hard. Perhaps this was exactly what needed to happen for both of us, to confront truths long buried beneath layers of complacency and silence that had defined our lives together for too long now. But before I could gather myself enough to think clearly about what came next, what paths lay ahead, I heard footsteps approaching again, only this time they belonged not to him but rather someone else entirely. The door creaked open, and there he stood, my husband's nephew, a mix of concern and eagerness on his face. I felt my heart race, caught between the weight of my decision and the thrill of our connection. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, stepping inside as if he could sense the turmoil in the air. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of my true feelings. "I just need to figure some things out." The words hung between us, heavy with unspoken implications. He moved closer, his presence both comforting and disconcerting. I could see the worry etched on his brow. "I don't want to pressure you," he said, his voice low. "But I need to know where we stand." The question lingered, echoing in my mind like a siren call. Could I really leave everything behind? My marriage had been my life for so long, it was hard to imagine stepping away from it completely. As I searched for an answer, I felt a pang of guilt wash over me again. My husband deserved better than this tangled mess. Yet the thought of returning to that stagnant existence was suffocating. The nephew reached out gently, brushing his fingers against mine, an innocent gesture that sent shivers down my spine. "I care about you," he continued, his gaze steady and sincere. "I want something real with you." His admission struck me like lightning, illuminating the darkest corners of my heart where doubt had taken root. Could I truly embrace this new path? Just then, I heard my husband's voice from outside the bathroom door, his tone sharp and demanding. "Allison. Are you in there?" Panic surged through me as I realized how close we were to being discovered. The nephew's eyes widened in alarm. We both knew what would happen if he walked in now. "Hide," I whispered urgently, and without hesitation, he slipped behind the shower curtain just as my husband entered the room. The tension was palpable as I forced myself to breathe normally while facing him. "What are you doing in here?" he asked suspiciously, crossing his arms. "You've been acting strange lately." His eyes narrowed at me as if searching for signs of betrayal. "I just needed some time alone," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding behind me. My heart raced as silence enveloped us for a moment too long, then he softened slightly. "Look," he said finally, "I think we need to talk about us." Those words hung in the air like an impending storm, heavy and ominous. The nephew shifted slightly behind me. I could feel him tense up at the sound of my husband's voice growing louder with each passing second. "I don't want this marriage to fall apart," my husband added earnestly. My mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Should I confess everything now? Would it be better to come clean or keep hiding? Just then, a glint caught my eye. It was my phone on the counter beside me, the screen lit up with new messages from him. "Let's sit down tonight," my husband suggested cautiously, breaking through my thoughts again. "We need clarity." The word clarity echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. All this time spent seeking connection had led me here, to this moment where everything could unravel at any instant. "I agree," I managed to say while mentally calculating how much time we had left before our secret would be exposed completely. Finally gathering courage that felt foreign yet necessary, I decided then that tonight would be different. I would tell him everything once and for all. But just as that thought crystallized within me, a loud crash echoed from outside our bathroom window, followed by frantic shouting from neighbors across the street. It shattered whatever resolve I'd built up inside moments before. Curiosity mixed with fear gripped me tightly as we exchanged worried glances. "What was that?" The urgency in his voice pulled me back into reality, the momentary distraction fading away into something far more pressing than our own tangled emotions. "I don't know," I replied hesitantly, dread pooled in my stomach as we both moved toward the window, instinctively drawn by chaos unfolding outside our home. Hearing through glass panes revealed an alarming scene. Police cars lined up along our street while officers shouted commands at people gathered nearby, a crowd forming around someone sprawled on the ground below, a stark contrast against ordinary suburban life that had once felt so predictable just moments ago. "Should we go check?" he asked quietly but urgently while glancing back at me uncertainly, our previous conversation forgotten amidst escalating tensions outside our walls now closing in around us both. I hesitated but nodded slowly. Whatever lay ahead would change everything again. It had already begun shifting beneath us like quicksand, pulling us deeper into uncertainty. The door creaked open, and I braced myself for the confrontation I had been dreading. My husband stood there, his face a mask of anger and betrayal. "You think I wouldn't find out?" he spat, holding my phone like evidence in a courtroom. The messages between me and his nephew glared back at me, a stark reminder of my choices. "I can explain," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. But the words felt hollow even as they left my lips. He cut me off, his eyes blazing with hurt and confusion. "Explain what?" "How you've been lying to me for months." The accusation hung heavy in the air, suffocating any hope of rational discussion. I took a step back, feeling the weight of my actions crash down on me like a tidal wave. "I never meant for this to happen," I managed to say, but he wasn't listening anymore. His mind was made up. "I want a divorce," he declared flatly, as if it were simply an item on his to-do list. The finality of his words struck me hard. I had anticipated this moment but never truly believed it would come to pass. My heart raced as panic set in. Everything I had built over the past 7 years was crumbling before my eyes. "Please," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "Can we talk about this?" He shook his head vehemently, stepping back as if distancing himself from the very thought of us together anymore. "What's there to talk about? You've made your choice." His tone was cold and detached, and it cut deeper than any knife could. Suddenly, all those late nights spent texting with his nephew flashed through my mind, the laughter we shared, the moments that felt so alive compared to my mundane marriage. But now those memories felt tainted under the weight of betrayal. My husband's eyes darted away from mine as though he couldn't bear to look at me any longer. "I'll pack my things," he said curtly before turning on his heel and walking out the door without another word. The finality of his departure echoed in the silence that followed. I stood frozen in place, grappling with disbelief and regret. In that moment of solitude, I felt utterly lost. My world had shifted dramatically overnight. As I sank onto the couch, tears streamed down my cheeks unbidden. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly for what I had done not just to him but also to myself. Hours later, after the initial shock wore off slightly, I reached for my phone with trembling hands. Would he respond? Or had our connection severed completely? As if on cue, a message popped up from my husband, "I'm staying at Mom's tonight." The coldness in those words sent shivers down my spine. In that instant, I realized how isolated I truly was. My husband was gone. Even the nephew seemed distant now after hearing about our fallout. What had begun as an escape from loneliness had spiraled into something far worse than solitude itself, abandonment. Desperate for comfort or clarity, I decided to reach out to him one last time despite everything that happened between us recently. My fingers hovered over the screen hesitantly before typing out a simple message, "Can we talk?" As soon as it sent, doubt flooded through me. Was this even wise? Would he be angry? Or worse yet, would he ignore me altogether? Minutes passed like hours until finally another notification chimed through. "I need space right now." Those words hit harder than any blow could have. They confirmed what I'd feared all along. He wanted nothing more to do with me either. The realization settled heavily within me. Not only had I lost my husband but also someone who once brought light into my life during its darkest moments. Alone in our once happy home now filled with echoes of laughter turned sorrowful silence, it dawned on me how quickly everything could change when choices were made without thinking through their consequences fully. As night fell outside our windows casting shadows across empty rooms, I couldn't shake off that sense of impending doom looming over every corner like an unwelcome guest refusing to leave. The next morning, I woke up to an unsettling silence. My husband had left for work without a word. The weight of his anger hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a message from my husband or the nephew. Nothing. The absence of communication felt like a chasm opening between us all. I tried to busy myself with household chores, but every creak of the floorboards reminded me of yesterday's confrontation. The messages on my phone were still there, glaring at me like accusations I couldn't escape. I picked it up, hesitating as I scrolled through our conversations. Each exchange felt like a betrayal now. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was my sister-in-law, her expression unreadable as she entered. "I heard about what happened," she said flatly, her tone devoid of sympathy. "You need to talk to him." Her words cut deeper than I expected. "I know," I replied, feeling a rush of shame wash over me. "I just don't know how." She sighed and looked around the room as if searching for answers in the cluttered space we once shared joy in. "Maybe you should reach out to him," she suggested cautiously. "He's hurting too." Her voice softened slightly as she continued, "But you need to be honest with yourself first." I nodded but felt paralyzed by uncertainty. Would honesty even matter now? As she left, I realized how isolated I had become. Family members were taking sides, whispers circulating behind closed doors about my choices. Later that day, while sitting at a local cafe nursing a coffee that had gone cold, I received a text from the nephew. "Can we talk?" it read simply. My heart raced at the thought of seeing him again after everything that had transpired. I hesitated but ultimately agreed to meet him later that evening at our usual spot, a dimly lit bar where laughter once flowed freely between us. As I drove there, memories flooded back, moments filled with shared secrets and laughter now tainted by guilt. When he arrived, his face was serious, he didn't smile like he used to. "I heard about your husband," he said quietly as we settled into a corner booth away from prying eyes. "I'm sorry." "It's complicated," I replied, feeling tears threaten to spill over again. "Everything feels broken now." He nodded and leaned closer as if wanting to bridge the distance that had grown between us since yesterday. "I didn't want this for us," he confessed softly. "But we can't pretend anymore." His words hung in the air heavy with implications neither of us wanted to acknowledge fully. At that moment, something shifted within me. Clarity emerged amidst confusion and pain. "What do you want?" I asked point-blank, desperate for direction amidst swirling emotions. "I want you to be happy," He replied earnestly but hesitated before adding, even if it means being apart. His honesty struck me hard. He was willing to distance himself for my sake while I felt lost without his support. As we parted ways that night under flickering streetlights casting long shadows down empty sidewalks, I realized how fragile everything had become, relationships fraying at the seams due to choices made in fleeting moments of weakness. Returning home felt surreal. Each step echoed through hollow rooms where laughter used to linger like sweet perfume now gone stale, an unwelcome reminder of what was lost forever. The next morning brought no relief. Instead it intensified my sense of isolation further still, the walls around me closing in tighter than ever before as reality set in with brutal clarity. Divorce loomed on the horizon like an impending storm threatening everything familiar and safe. Just then my phone buzzed, a message from my husband demanding a meeting later that day, a last-ditch effort for resolution perhaps? Anxiety surged within me at the thought of facing him again after all that had transpired. Would he seek closure or simply more conflict? As I prepared myself mentally for whatever awaited during our conversation, I couldn't shake off one nagging thought: would anything ever feel whole again? Or was this truly just the beginning of an unraveling thread leading toward an uncertain future? With every tick of the clock echoing louder than before, I braced myself for what lay ahead, knowing full well there'd be no turning back from this point onward.